Hi, everyone. Welcome to this session of the Staff Engineering Path Book Club in the APAC session. We are discussing Chapter 3, Creating the Big Picture, and we already have some discussion points. I added some just to start the conversation, but feel free to, we can move through them a bit faster. We have the previous session's notes. I think you linked them, Tom. Is there something you wanted to highlight from them?
No.
Yes, cool. Just a reference. Yeah, cool. So, all right, I'll get started with the first point. This is a quote from the book. A technical vision describes the future as you'd like it to be once the objectives have been achieved and the biggest problems are solved. Describing how everything will be after the work is done makes it easier for everyone to imagine that world without getting hung up on the details of getting there. I think I do like that statement, but I guess in on our day-to-day work, I'm not sure if we always have a vision, especially at the group or team level, and then going forward as a stage or as a development department, that kind of thing. Has anyone seen a lot of the vision? I've seen some, but maybe not all the time.
I mean, for me, I've definitely worked in projects where I'm sure at some point there was that vision, but it would have been created by I think someone at a higher level than a staff engineer. So yeah, we've ultimately worked on those, and the staff engineers have been instrumental in implementing those visions. But I think the vision itself would be from like a group manager or someone higher up.
Yeah, you're right, and I find that interesting that in the book it's like it's sort of implying that it's up to the staff engineer to work on that vision in a sense, and strategize to build that vision in the future.
Yeah, it makes me wonder because the staff engineer definition at GitLab will be different than the staff engineer definition at another company. And maybe at another company or the company that the author or companies or people that the author's worked out with, they've been responsible for maybe different levels of the strategy than we are at GitLab, or maybe it's just I don't have the visibility on that, and I've only been seeing from my perspective the size and of these issues and epics that are worked on, and they seem to be the staff level is a little bit not as all encompassing as the author has written about. And I think this kind of like is touched upon in a few other parts, as we'll get into the discussion a little bit later about some points that I was talking about as well, in the length of some of these things.
Yep.
But yeah, I'd be curious, for Tong, if you've worked on any technical visions or technical strategies.
Yeah, no, not visions. I think just a reminder, the earlier part of the book, the author did define staff as staff, principal, everyone above. So it's all encompassing. For the scenario that's been described in this book, that feels more like a principal engineer's role to me. Sometimes referred to as senior staff in other companies, sometimes referred to as staff in other companies as well, confusingly. And then there's a lower principal level. Yeah. But yeah, right. I think like for example, the biggest project I've been on was the decomposition project, and that was written by like a working group with very senior people in it, like Jerry, who's a fellow, and then with input from Camille and Stan. Yeah, and then we started out breaking into different parts. Yeah, but the vision. So yeah, as in the vision, that is.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like the biggest. sorry. I was just trying to think of,
Yeah.
I was trying to think about like the biggest things that I've seen this like staff engineers on our team work on. And that was like there was definitely documentation, like large amounts of documentation that would describe in detail all the different components and for a particular implementation that was upcoming. But it wasn't so much. I think that the vision and the strategy was at a higher level. Sorry, go on, David.
Yeah, what I was gonna say, because I mean I started late, so I haven't read it all, so I may be missing something. But from my point of view, it's more about having vision helps staff engineer to decide what to do, as opposed to staff engineer comes up with a vision, so to speak. I think to me that it's sort of like having something there. As a staff engineer, you focus on that more so than what you do day-to-day basis. So I think it feels like it's not necessarily staff engineers does that, but
Yeah.
having that helps staff engineer to be a staff engineer, if that makes sense.
There's nothing that says a staff engineer can write the vision, and but it's really it makes it harder to succeed because you have to do all the extra work of getting staffing, all that kind of things, which is harder for you.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for sharing, everyone. This is quite interesting to me. I have the next one. If there's another quote from the book, if there really is no way for multiple, well, this is talking about writing the strategy in context of the chapter, writing the strategy involving like a group, like a core group or kind of thing, like where a smaller number of people get together to define what needs to be done. And there was this discussion point where people input from many different people are trying to like steal the thunder from everyone else, that kind of thing. So the quote is like, if there's really no way for multiple people to succeed on the same project without playing ape games, consider going somewhere with more available scope and a healthier culture. What I found here is like, I haven't really seen that at GitLab where people are trying to, push or step on each other's toes. It's more like really trying to be collaborative. So that's pretty cool. I don't know if anyone has seen this at GitLab or at other places where people are just like, just to be on the spotlight, but not really necessarily doing the work.
I've definitely felt that same way at GitLab. I mean, in comparison to other companies that I've worked, yeah, there's definitely some very toxic work environments, extremely like stuff that would just never fly at GitLab. And it also does seem that with like the thanks channel where everyone's thanking each other, the bonuses for doing a good job, and the collaborative aspect of people. Also, I guess it's probably like the fact that we work in so many different time zones. It kind of helps facilitate that because a lot of the time you'll work on something and you'll pass it off to another developer that is just starting in Europe as you're going to sleep, and then they can pass it on. So we really have to be strong with collaboration, and also because the workflow is so asynchronous, it's also important there where maybe synchronous workflow makes spotlight stealing more prevalent.
Yeah, that's true. I think we are very lucky in this async nature that we have. All of these things are given in a way.
I have just one comment about that, like, because I believe that there's a staff ratio or something like that per group. I think I don't quite remember what the ratio was and things like that. But say that if you have number of senior engineers in the group, then there's only certain room for staff that might create that kind of environment that you need to prove yourself to be worthy to be, promoted before everyone else kind of thing. So I think I see that could be a possible way that might happen, but I haven't seen anything at GitLab, obviously, so far.
cool. I have another one. We can go over this one quickly. A bit of an unpopular opinion. I don't know, maybe. As I was reading through the chapter and through the examples, I felt like building the strategy and working on all those things is very political. Like you need to contact the right people. You need to get a sponsor. You need to get, try to convince certain key people that are decision makers. And it's like, I don't know, a lot of back and forth until you can present a proposal that most people would say yes. At least some of the examples in the chapter were like that. And I'm like, I was not sure how I feel about it. Like, I don't know if that's something that happens at GitLab as well, or maybe this ties to what Thong said about more of like a principal engineer kind of role that is a bit higher up. So yeah, I don't know. Anyone has some thoughts about this?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a bit of that. It applies to every role actually, like every engineering role, even if you're senior or not. I think it's about communication and making sure you have common understanding with whoever you are interacting with. So the most direct example in the chapter is about asking other people to work on your project that is not even their main focus. So that's really what other people will call the art of persuasion or politics. But it's basically work, I guess, to me.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I don't think this is being political, but it's more about being influential. Like, I think it is necessary to be able to influence people to buy into what we think is important and how to make them also see what we think is important in their perspective. Like, they need to see what how it affects how the ideas that we have make a difference to them.
Yeah, I think I agree with both Albin and Tong that often in my experience, it's been more about trying to align your goals with other people's needs rather than the sort of politics side of things. And that's not always immediately obvious for the person who's receiving the information as well, because there are other competing challenges that take their attention as well. Yeah, so I think it definitely seems like something that's more like a problem for, not a problem, but a challenge for any level. But yeah, it might be interesting to see how that also changes as you get to higher levels and you have to be the one actually driving the decisions a lot of the time. Yeah,
you're all right. I think I probably was blinded by the example when I was reading, the use case and all the other examples around this were a bit like, you need to convince everyone to be on board or else you're gonna fail. That kind of, I got that feeling, but yeah, you're all right.
No, I mean,
just
sorry, did someone?
Yeah, I wanted to say something.
Go for it.
So it reminds me of what a previous manager told me. Like, whenever we share ideas, like the thing that we always have to think about is, can we answer a question from the audience, like what's in it for me? If someone asks you, what's in this for me, we should be able to answer that clearly. And that will help us get better alignment.
That's a very good point, Albert. Thanks for sharing that.
Also, like, I can see where you're coming from, just to add on to that, because like things could have gone really wrong in all three failure modes, I guess, because they did describe 2 previous attempts which failed, right? So like in a more political culture, those 2 people would have been could have been sidelined or faced repercussions or failing. Like it can be misused for sure. Like, but it's really up to your organization and culture, not to have things like that be misused. Otherwise, no one will ever step up. Yeah.
Yeah, true that. Cool. Adam, you have the next one.
Yeah, I was just this kind of goes back to, I guess, the scope or the size of the scope on some of the stuff where earlier we were discussing that some of these are really, really, it seems quite large. And I guess I wasn't really didn't know if this was beyond the staff engineer role at GitLab. And I was talking about the SOC Matcher case study where they talk about a high level 1 year technical strategy. Because yeah, I haven't seen anything, but I'm just, judging from like the small, view that I have on my team and the staff engineers that I've worked closely with. I haven't seen anything that's that big, like a year plus. But it looks like Tong points to the architecture page, and it seems that some of those may be taking, a year or more. And it looks like those are created by staff engineers and coaches at a higher level. So thanks for pointing out that handbook link. That's useful.
Yeah, in addition to the blueprints,
Um,
so the blueprints are things that actually people have agreement on, so that's why they get written. But in addition to the blueprints, there's also working groups as well that have been around for more than a year and deciding for things that are bigger than a year. So I think a good example is the API vision, I think. Yeah, we're deciding what to do about the API long term. Don't know if you know about that.
Yeah, I'm not across that. But I guess, yeah, we don't really need to get too much into the actual details of this stuff. I don't see that on the architecture page. Where would that be located? Or is it just in the handbook somewhere else?
There's probably a handbook page that lists all the working groups as well. So
okay,
I'll try and find it.
I mean, I guess that's another big part of the path to the staff engineer at GitLab is to get involved in working groups. So, to get a better understanding of the process and how it all works. So that's definitely something on my radar. Have you been involved in many of these architecture strategies that have taken a year or more than a year, Tom?
I'm in ports right now.
Sorry?
I'm working in ports right now. That's might take 3 years or more.
Yeah. But have you been involved in like creating a strategy for any of this kind of stuff?
Yeah, I've been helping creating the strategy for ports right now. So the ports blueprint was I was authoring parts of that as well. But yeah, and I think there's a page that says like the kind of the time frames staff engineer is defining for, and it's like 3 to 6 months or something like that. And then as a guideline, and then if your principal is 6 to 9 months, and you're distinguished, it's very long time frames. Yeah.
I think I have another question. Yes, so I think what's clear to me is that the time it takes to get the technical strategy completed, like in terms of execution, it's usually like a year or multiple year long. But how long does it take to actually write a technical strategy? Does it take a lot of does it take like many months, or is it like a 1 week kind of work, or maybe even shorter than that? Like, what's the process like to completely write a technical vision to get it to the state where it's set in sort of this is the direction that we want to go. This is how we're gonna get there. This is what we need, basically, to get things started. Like, how long does it take to get to that point?
So I think like first there needs to be agreement about the goal, and that might take a very long time. It might take years to even agree on a goal, or it might be really quick. So that's the first part. Yeah. So I guess that's where the vision comes in. And then writing the strategy, it depends on how big the thing is. But for example, for the ports strategy, I think it took about 3 months, I think. We had like, I can't remember, maybe a bit more than that. But we spent a few months, yeah, understanding what we're even trying to do, and then kind of brainstorming what kind of high level strategies that we want to use. And then when it came to writing, we actually went a bit against the flow actually, because we said, okay, this is too much stuff. If you write everything, we'll get nitpicked to death, and it will never get merged. So we just wrote one paragraph saying, this is the strategy, this is the goal. Oh, sorry, this is the goal and this is the strategy in 2 paragraphs, and then say it, we're gonna merge it. So that's how we started.
I guess that makes sense. Like, so in a way you said where you want to go first and then figure out how to get there.
Well, and we sort of have a rough idea how we want to do it, right? Because we decided then already. And then,
yeah.
Whoa, what is going on? Okay, I thought there was an earthquake, but it's just a washing machine.
It sounds like the most Wellington life experience ever.
Cool. Adam, you have the next one.
Yeah, this was just an observation as I was reading through. I guess maybe all of us kind of read through these chapters in a similar frame of mind, where we're comparing the content of the chapters to our experience at GitLab. And when they talk about monolith, of course, my brain just starts thinking about the GitLab monolith. And when they say no, developers want to work on the monolith, it's there are definitely challenges when working on the GitLab monolith as opposed to working on for isolated components that Docker containers, analyzers, that kind of stuff. But yeah, one of the things that they were talking about in the case study was about componentizing the monolith to make like shared components and to make it easier to work on things individually. And it just reminded me of this other large issue that I think has had a lot of back and forth discussion, which was a proposal to split the monolith into components. And you can kind of see after the author of the book was laying out all of the different challenges, you can kind of see, because sometimes you think, oh yeah, why don't we do this? Why don't we just make microservices? And then one of the things that the author talks about was that, okay, yeah, we could do that, but it could take 3 years. And then there's also a set of problems and challenges with that. So yeah, it's just an observation in case anyone hadn't seen that issue. It's an interesting one to see where some people are maybe trying to, it's in the very early stages of maybe something that will become much bigger. And I guess I got unless anyone wants to discuss that particular item, then the next one is about using feature flags. That's another thing as we're relating it to ourselves that, feature flags are already something that we use quite a bit. And then Jamie, I guess you had an add-on point about that.
Yeah, like it's great how it's integrated into the GitLab monolith. It's just there, it works. We have the infrastructure around it. We have the chat ops, and everything works great. But when it comes to satellite projects or other projects like container registry pages, the ones that I've been working on mostly, but there's a CAS agent as well. We don't have a proper solution for it. There are proposals. Every project has its own issue that is trying to list how they're going to solve it, but we haven't actually reached a conclusion on how we're going to get to the next stage and build it. I was working on this and I got stuck. I didn't know how to move forward and I just kind of forgot about it. But it's, as I was reading through the chapter, I kept relating to that project and say, okay, how can I get to the next step on this. And hopefully I can make something out of this.
I guess, yeah, my question about that is what prevented you from getting to the next step? Was it a technical problem, or was it more of like buy-in from people that can give you resources, like more political type of problem?
I think it was more political. Like I had a proposal and I didn't get a no from people, which after I finished reading the chapter, it was like, if there's no disagreement, it's probably an okay solution. When people are not happy with a solution, they will all raise their voices and say, no, this is wrong. But I kind of stopped there. I didn't push it forward. And I guess probably I'm lacking someone that can help me start scheduling things, like buying from product or buying from my manager or from someone else. So getting the sponsor, basically.
Yeah, I did find that point interesting, where they said that, because sometimes I'm working on something and I'm trying to get agreement from everybody. So that was an interesting point that they introduced in the chapter, was talking about that you don't need agreement. You don't need complete consensus. You can just say, is there anyone that doesn't agree with this, or is there any part of this plan that is unacceptable for you? And if no one raises their voice, then yeah, that's you can move forward on that. Because I've definitely gotten stuck trying to. I remember it took 6 months to make one small change because nobody could agree on this one small change. And in retrospect, I guess maybe I should have said, but even then, on that one small change, even if I did say, is anyone disagreeing with it? There was always one person disagreeing. So I don't know if I could have really resolved that.
Yep.
Maybe it was just destined to take a long time.
The other approach is to just break the knot. The chicken and egg situation is potentially writing a small POC. So you have a better idea on whether to justify more time or not. Because in the beginning you might say, okay, this project sounds good. And then 3 years later, you're still working on it. So that's the last thing you want, right? So because especially if you didn't get permission to schedule on things there. So that's why a small POC would help clear some of this ambiguities, even in your own mind as well.
Yep. No, that makes sense. And in this specific example, I've thought about doing it, but then it comes to like, when am I gonna do this?
I guess maybe, yeah, you need to get some time, schedule it, maybe have an OKR for creating a POC, so that you have constant, updates and check-ins with your manager and milestones.
I think it's maybe related to some of the things that I just read, because I started late. But there was a saying about like staff engineer oversees above their own group, so you need to see what other group are being affected by the changes that you're making. And if the opposition was coming from that group that creating more job because of you are making such a change, then that's something that we need to consider more seriously. But if it's purely like, I just don't like it kind of comments, then probably if you're a DRI, then just commit and move on.
Cool. Albert, you have the last one.
Yeah. So one thing I think is like transparent. So I think that's unique to us. And with that, it brings a lot of a situation where anyone can see what we're working on, even when it's in draft or something that is partially done or not ready for feedback. And occasionally, what we get are like comments, which can be a little bit distracting. Like people might nitpick on certain parts of like the proposal, which may or may not be relevant to the goal at that point in time. So how do we filter or address this kind of comments without delay progress on the actual goal that we want to achieve? Because sometimes like we can address all the comments, but everything requires time. On our side, it requires effort. So how do we acknowledge these comments and yet be clear that this is currently like out of scope of what we want to do, and we will address them separately.
What David said is very relevant to this one as well. So if you have a DRI, you can just consider it and keep moving really. I'll add to that. I think in the handbook it says, well, in terms of communication, sometimes you don't even need to acknowledge.
Yeah, I think there is
one
something.
more. Go on.
No, go on, please.
Yeah, I'll just say quickly. One thing that I find useful is provide as much information as possible upfront is helpful, as opposed to trying to answer the question after the fact, because I feel like some people don't read all the comments. They just see the first one and then just comment. So I think it'll be best to describe, this is the plan and we consider this, and then this is where we're gonna go. And we know that there's a problem like this, but we think that's not something that we want to tackle right now, so we'll tackle it later or something like that. Might be helpful to make things easier.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think the other thing that I just got reminded of was something in the handbook about not having to have consensus or sort of like agree to disagree, like we commit and move on from there.
Cool. Does anyone else have anything? All right. So yeah, we're at time. Thanks everybody for showing up this week. Yeah, we'll just I guess see you next week with chapter 4.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Jaime,
Thanks.
for
Bye-bye.
organizing and
Thank you.
yeah, leading this. See y'all.
All good. See ya.
Yeah.
See ya.
Bye.